I'd probably tell myself that what I'm doing matters.
Yeah.
I definitely didn't realize at the time how much it was going to matter for me later in life. In the moment, it was like a sport that I was doing. I never would have imagined myself being 35 and competing on Team Canada still.
Welcome back to After the Routine. I'm your host, Rochelle Provo, and I'm here with someone that I lovingly refer to as the Queen of Team Canada, Kaitlyn Harvey. Kaitlyn is an athlete, judge, choreographer, and coach at Vision Cheer Company in Winnipeg, Manitoba's largest cheerleading program. She's also a former Team Canada athlete for over a decade and the current coach of Team Canada Co-ed's national training pool. I was very fortunate to have met Kaitlyn over 10 years ago at a Team Canada fundraiser clinic and have followed her career and have been so inspired by her passion for the sport that I often cite her as one of the forces behind me going back to the sport to compete in my late 20s. So thank you so much for letting my 17-year-old self fangirl again and being a part of this podcast, Kaitlyn.
That was so kind. Wow, that's an awesome introduction.
No, it's so well deserved. Like, I know every single time that I talk to like quite a few people, I'm like, no, like the person that I associate with Team Canada is you 100%. Like you have been such a part of it for so long and been a part of the growth and really just the change in it. So I'm so excited that we get to talk about it and your journey and all the things that come with your career as an athlete, but also all the other things that you do, because I don't know if everyone knows how many other things you get to do.
Yeah, I really appreciate that, Rochelle.
Well, you're welcome. So I'd love to start with like, how did you get into the sport and like, how has your journey kind of evolved?
Yeah. Um, I will try and keep it as short as possible. It has been a long journey. A lot like yourself, I joined cheerleading what would be considered a little later for the sport. So I joined when I was 14 in high school, which I think is around when you joined as well.
Yep.
If I am correct. Yeah. Prior to that, I was a gymnast. So it's sort of a natural progression I find going from gymnastics into cheerleading. But
Yeah.
it definitely took me a little bit to find a sport that worked for me. Growing up, my parents like put me in every sport imaginable. And I have really good proprioception, which is like awareness of where my limbs are in space, but a lot of difficulty with anything outside of my body. So most of the sports that my parents tried me in, I was very unsuccessful. Like if you threw a ball at me, it would hit me in the face. And like I still struggle with swimming and riding a bike and things like that. And then when I joined gymnastics, we finally found something that clicked. It seems like, oh, this was
Yeah.
something that I can do that came kind of naturally to me. And cheerleading was not something that was ever on my radar. I was a gymnast all the way up till I was 11 and then tried a couple other little things out. I did some dance because my twin sister was into dance. I wasn't overly graceful, so it wasn't for me. When I got to high school, my parents basically said, like, you need to join a sport. You can't do nothing. You have to pick something.
Yeah.
And my high school happened to have a cheerleading team. So I was like, you know what? I'll give it a try. There's no harm in it. If I don't like it, it's whatever. And I ended up just absolutely falling in love with it. I started on my high school team. And then from there, I joined All Star a couple years in because one of the coaches also coached at an All Star gym.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, I just kind of went from there.
That's awesome. Yeah, I know. I am also the same. My husband keeps trying to get me to play golf, and I'm like, no, like that's a whole other extension of me. And that, no, if it's like me and like I can do it, you know, it works really well. My mom also used to say that in the air or on the mats, I was like so graceful and it works so well. But off that, I just challenge gravity. Like I am someone who like trips over nothing. And I'm like, I don't know how this translated to like loving and being like okay at the sport and like decent at it where like I can do it, you know, where I'm older and that. But yeah, I'm the same. Don't ask me to play football. Trying to kick a soccer ball much more than like one kick is not happening. But yeah, no, I love that. And then what about cheerleading made you be like, yeah, this is my thing?
When I first started into it, I really liked the community aspect of it just because it was such a drastic change from gymnastics. It still had all the same like personal drive, personal challenges, personal goals, but you got to do it with other people. So it just felt like a lot more of like a community aspect of it. It wasn't as isolating as gymnastics was. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. I actually have like, there's two very specific moments in my cheerleading career where I remember like falling in love with cheerleading and knowing I was going to continue with it. And then the moment I like fell in love with Team Canada and knew I was going to continue. And
Please expand on that. I would love to know.
I am for sure going to age myself with this story.
Nope. Please do it because I do it all the time.
Like I really enjoyed cheerleading, and it wasn't something that I necessarily saw myself doing forever.
Yeah.
When I was like in high school, my first year competing at Worlds, it was in 2007. And I wasn't really sure what my plans were after high school, if I was going to be finished with it or not. And then in 2010, at Worlds was, for those that were around at this time, it was the year that World Cup Shooting Stars had their theme, the like cha-cha-cha theme, and then Senior Elite had, it was the year that Maddie Gardner competed, the 360 ball up TikTok.
Yeah.
You're familiar with this.
So, about this on the episode with Gabby, I was like, this was like the moment in 2010.
Yes. And so this was back when like it was competing. I think it was in the field house, it was called. And so I was there. I got to like see this live in person. And I was not one of those people that watched cheer videos at all. Like I was not a diehard cheer fan at this point. And I was sitting in the crowd and those two teams came on and they were back to back. And it was thousands of people in the crowd singing their music start to finish. And I was in awe. I had never experienced anything like that. Like thousands of people coming together, just excited about the same thing. It felt almost cult-like. It was such a crazy experience. So sitting there and like watching all of these people from all these different places come together over the same routine and be so excited about the same thing. And I was in tears. I was like, this is amazing. I want to do this forever.
Which is amazing because like social media wasn't a huge thing then. So like, I know like I was like watching all the YouTube videos and like trying to get the updates. You could not watch the like live stream at that point in time. Like it was just like you got updates as it happened. And I remember just like trying to like refresh and do all these things. And like the fact that so many people would like sing their lyrics and we don't have the same connection with social media now just like shows you their impact to the community. Because like, I remember the 360 ball up, like it is in my mind as like one of the most influential moments of like, oh my God, I want to be able to do that.
Yes. And it's funny because now that skill is fairly common, but at the time that was like iconic. It was the moment.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I literally just said it with Gabby. I was like, that's like, at level, maybe now, like you're just like, you see it all the time. And then you just see some of the other skills and the way the sport has progressed over the past like 15, 20 years has like astounding. Like even as like a choreographer, I can't wait to like talk a little bit about more of that because the creativity side, insane compared to like, I remember the point in time when like actual music could be in your routine soundtrack. And so like then trying to like choose which like iconic songs you're gonna put in and then like you could theme your whole routine to that music. And I love that. And then what about Team Canada? What was that moment when you were like, yes, 100% I want to be here?
Yeah, my first year on Team Canada, which would have been in 2014, I was on Team Canada Co-ed, and it was like the first time where I got to experience a moment like that on the other side of it as an athlete. The all-girl team competed before us, and we had to go straight to warm-up gym afterwards. So the co-ed team was all in uniform, and we walked out of the top of the field house to watch all-girl. and so that we could run right back into warm-up gym. And we walked out and a couple people saw us and started like the CANADA Canada cheer. And then the whole stadium started chanting it, like people from all different countries, the whole, like thousands of people started chanting it. And I just stood there like bawling, like, this is so cool.
I literally have goosebumps. Like that, yeah, that's incredible. Oh my gosh. So like when it comes to Team Canada, so national programs are very different than like if you go and try out for your high school program, you go and try out for All-Star. So what made you decide that like, yeah, I'm going to go try out for Team Canada? And what is that tryout process like?
Yeah. So it was my last year in university cheer when I tried out for Team Canada. So it was kind of like, what am I going to do now with cheerleading that I'm done with university? And I cheered at the University of Western Ontario. So Trace was my coach. Like a lot of people that have come from cheerleading came through Trace. And 2014, he got selected as one of the coaches for Team Canada. And so that was kind of the first thing that put it on my radar. And so I decided to try out and see what happened, and ended up making the team. And the tryout process over the years has changed considerably. There was a few years where it was like done in person at PCA Nationals. There's been video submissions. It's like it's constantly evolving.
Yeah.
So it does change every year. But I think like the biggest difference is more so the training aspect of it in comparison to All-Star.
Yeah. So what does that look like?
With All-Star, you are, especially nowadays, there's very little off season. Like you get home from Worlds, tryouts are pretty much right away, and you're right into it, and you're practicing twice a week, sometimes more with your team. It's like it's a very consistent, frequent training schedule. With Team Canada, we're from all over the country. That is just not feasible. So you train in training camps that are like 4 to 7 days long, several times throughout the year. So everybody on the team flies into one central location. It changes constantly. And then you train together 3 times a day for however long the camp is, and then you go home. So you really, by the time you compete at Worlds, you've probably spent a total of like, I don't know, 25 days together. But because you're training for so long, it probably adds up close to a season if you think about it.
Yeah. And then you also are training outside as well. Like if you have a stunt group that you're training or a co-ed partner.
Yes. Yeah. So it's quite typical for your stunt partner on co-ed or your stunt group on all girl to be local to you. And you're training with that person or that group on your stunt skills.
And then when you're in those training camps, that's where you're starting to piece together parts of the routine and, you know, pyramids where you require everyone.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
And then of that, you know, that experience is so different from what most people experience in cheerleading. So for you, what is the part of those training camps that you like the most?
My personal favorite thing about the training camps as an athlete was just the chance to push yourself to limits that you didn't think you could do. Like your bodies are not meant to train for 8 hours a day for multiple days on end. And it's pushing, it gets hard on day 3, and then pushing yourself through that and then finding out what you're actually capable of is super rewarding.
Yeah, I love that. And then when you think about like all your teammates, the athletes now that you're coaching in the training pool, what do you find are the attributes of those athletes that succeed the most in those national programs?
Definitely like resilience, willing to try new things. A lot of the skills on Team Canada are new for a lot of the athletes, even those that are making the team. So like level 7 has grown significantly over the years, but there's still a major learning curve when you're coming from All-Star if you weren't in level 7, particularly with things like baskets, which can be very mentally challenging to learn. And so it takes a lot of grit and willingness to put yourself into uncomfortable situations, to learn those skills, trust your teammates that you really don't know all that well, especially in the beginning. And be able to like push through a little bit of that discomfort and that fear. And again, like find out what you're made of and what's possible.
I love that. And then so for you talked about like making the team. So for it, you try out for the team? Do you try out for the training pool? And then how do you make the mat on Team Canada?
So this is a constantly evolving thing. So it changes every year. We are certainly not at a point where we have it all figured out and set in stone. So this past season with the National Team Training Program, I call it NTTP. This is the first time we did it in the format that we did this season. So essentially how it worked was we took an entire team of athletes. They trained at all the training camps, the same as Team Canada. We put a routine together, the same as the premier team, and we did a showcase and showed the routine. And so they actually got to experience what a training camp is like and going through all of the same processes of putting a routine together and performing it. And I think that like this is probably this past season is the closest we've been to being able to imitate the actual experience of being on Team Canada and properly prepare athletes to be able to make that transition without it being a giant shock.
I love that. Yeah. For me, I think that would be like for so many athletes going from training the exact same way they've done for like 10 years and then transitioning. I know like even for the best of athletes, that would be like, oh my gosh, where do I go from here? So yeah, I love that they got to do a routine and also like do a showcase to show the skills. And then you feel like you're still progressing as well, even though you're not going onto the floor at Worlds.
Yeah. So how it was done last year, I don't know if this will be the same this year, but I imagine we'll follow something similar. Was when you applied, you could choose to apply for the premier program. You could choose to apply for only NTTP. Most people chose to apply just general wherever you got put. And the alternates for premier are also part of NTTP. So they're also training with NTTP so that they're training their skills and stuff like that as well. Now, full disclosure, I don't know if I will be coaching NTTP again this season. It's only a 1-year contract. I've reapplied for it. I don't know yet if I will be coaching it again, but
so we'll cross our fingers and hope and pray
I
and
hope
all the
so.
things. No, it's such an interesting way because having been that I've been in Scholastic and then going into All-Star, it's such a different shift even from there. So then to also go to the training program, I think I am always amazed by the different ways that cheerleading operates because what people think, we don't normally think outside of our bubble, right? So we think about in All-Star, we're only like going, okay, we're going to the next level. We're going to push these skills, but there are so many opportunities. And we've talked about this before on the podcast, but the fact that even within the sport and we look at the career side, there are way more opportunities than most people realize. They're like, oh, you're a coach or a gym owner, and that's about it. No, like alone, even just like the NTTP program is a whole other side of it that most people wouldn't be aware of.
Yeah. And the one thing I really love about that program is level 7 has grown significantly, but it's still, by comparison to the other levels, it is such a small pool of knowledge in Canada in comparison to levels 1 to 6. I think one of the things that's actually really helped with that, and I might get this year wrong by 1 or 2, but previously level 7 was called level 6. And then I think in either 2019 or 2020 is when they moved it to level 7 and added the extra level, which I think is one of the things that really bridged the gap for athletes transitioning into level 7. Because prior to that, you essentially went from attached twisting skills or like straight up and down free release skills. And then you move into level 6, which is now level 7. And suddenly for the first time, you're doing free release flipping and it's like a whole other sport.
Yeah.
The skills were completely different than what you were doing before. And there wasn't much of a smooth transition going into it. It was just a whole new thing. And then now with level 6, where you're allowed to do rewinds, extended hammy hands, like there's a lot more overlap where people are much more prepared to move on to that level 7. And it's the knowledge base of the coaching has expanded quite a bit too, but it's still not what it is with the other levels. Like, you'd be surprised how small the pool is of people that feel comfortable, confident teaching level 7, especially in some of the provinces that don't have it. Like there's some provinces that have excellent level 7. Like Quebec has had amazing level 7 for quite a long time,
Yeah.
with Ace and like Pirates. There's tons of them, like Flyers, like they have excellent level 7. Vancouver is another one that has a really great level 7 base and coaches and stuff like that. You don't see level 7 all that much in like Newfoundland, Nova Scotia.
Yeah.
If they don't have the same access to those resources to be teaching those skills. And it is expanding over time, and we're getting there. But by comparison to the rest of the cheerleading world, level 7 is still such a small subset.
I love that. Yeah. And then what about level 7 do you like the most? Because I know for a lot of what you're trying to do is really expand that knowledge base and really help people understand how to grow their programs into that new space.
Yeah. One of my favorite things about level 7 is that it's the biggest and best skills in the industry. And one of the reasons that I like to be very involved in it and that I'm really interested in level 7 is I would say cheerleading is probably one of the only sports where you can actually have an entry point at the highest level of the sport. So there tends to be this secondary entry point into cheerleading around the university level where people join their university team that haven't cheered before, and it's level 7. And I cannot think of another sport where your entry point is the hardest and highest level skills, right? I am very dedicated to the expansion of level 7, sharing of the knowledge of level 7 so it's done safely. And so that people can enjoy it and get the skills that they need to be able to be successful.
I love that. Yeah, it's been interesting to watch, like you said, where the country is at the point where the sport is evolving so much. And now we are starting to see those smaller provinces that haven't really had, they maybe had like 1 through 4, and now they're starting to approach into worlds levels 5, 6, 7. And so yeah, I'm so excited to see that growth as well. Now, that being said, level 7, you have a really awesome accomplishment, which was at the 2025 ICU Worlds. You were part of Team Canada Co-ed Premier, and you guys achieved a podium finish with a silver medal, which is like incredible. And so what was that experience like?
It's definitely one of my highlights for sure of my Team Canada experience. And it worked out nicely because it was also my retirement year. And so it was like a really nice way for me to kind of end things.
Yeah.
I spent 22 years as an athlete in cheerleading and 11 years as a Team Canada athlete. And in my 11 years, I medaled twice. One all girl, I think it was I want to say 2017 was when all girl medaled when I was a base on Team Canada all girl. And then again in 2025 with Team Canada co-ed. And so like Team Canada as a whole has been such a massive chunk of my life. Like over a third of my life was just Team Canada.
Yeah, I genuinely don't think people realize like how iconic you are to cheerlead, like Team Canada. For me, like it is like 100%. Like anytime I talked about it earlier, I'm like, I very lovingly refer to you as the queen of Team Canada because I'm like, you have just been a part of it for so long. Now, that being said, you did talk about retiring. And I know for not only Team Canada athletes, but maybe you're at the point where you're finishing high school, you're finishing university, and you're like, okay, I'm going to take a step back, which I like to say, take a pause, because I think every single guest on this show has said, like, cheerleading is one of those things that you don't ever leave it. You get back to it at some point, whether that's as an athlete, as a parent, as a coach, whatever that may be.
Yeah.
So that being said, though, retiring or taking a step, that can come with a big transition, especially like you said, like 22 years of your life was in cheerleading specifically as an athlete, 11 on Team Canada. So what do you recommend or kind of give tips for people who are thinking about pausing and retiring, and then they're looking towards the future and kind of what they can do?
Yeah. So like a lot of the time when people retire from sport, whether it's cheerleading or other sport, it tends to follow a natural life transition. So sometimes it might be a high school athlete, and when they transition into university, that's kind of where they stop with the sport, and now they have a natural next step of what they're moving towards. Or they might continue in their sport through university, and then that's the point where they retire when university's done, and now they're starting their career. And there's kind of this natural next step of what comes next. And regardless of whether that's the case, it is a huge shift in your identity that is very difficult to deal with, and a lot of athletes don't talk about. So, like, I met my husband cheerleading. He was my first stunt partner in university. My social circle is mostly people I've coached with and worked with, people I've been on teams with. So my whole social community is surrounded by this. My goals that I've had for myself for the last 20 years have mostly all been related to myself as an athlete. It's like it has an impact on your self-worth, the structure of your life. So when all of that stops, there's this period of identity change that is very difficult to navigate. And like, though I sort of did it because I did this for so long, I'm 35 and made the choice to retire. It wasn't necessarily to naturally step into another life transition or another step. And when you've had, there's a period of grief in stepping away from something that's shaped your identity for so long, even when you know it's the right transition, because you're saying goodbye to a piece of yourself of who you've known for so many years. And then you kind of end up in this moment of like, well, now what? And who am I without this?
100%.
So yeah, and I don't feel like people talk about it very often. A lot of people like go through that transition and navigate it on their own. And like that past year was really tough for me, trying to figure out what that was and redefining what my role is outside of competing, of course. So
yeah,
like I've really focused in on growing the sport and providing opportunity for others to live their dreams and their goals in the same way that I had the opportunity to do.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. Like, as someone who is also taking a pause this year, for the tail end of the season, it can also be hard because you're like, I have an end date, right? Whereas every other year you've been like, oh yeah, okay, just like I get like you said, 2 weeks off maybe, and then I'm gonna go into clinics and then I'm gonna go start a season. And even like the transition of athletes who are working out, right? Working out for a lot of times in cheerleading, it's not only physical, right? We think about that resilience. That I always explain it for like my younger athletes as when you walk in the door, everything stops, right? And you just get to be in this moment where like you have that ability to push yourself, and you're like have the accomplishment and like the frustration and all the things that come with getting new skills and like learning new aspects and that. But like you have little moments of celebration in that, and you get to do it with people, like you said, in a community, right? So I think it's always really interesting when people do take that pause. Like, now you're not working out maybe twice, 3 times a week. And for a lot of cheerleaders, we are not taught how to work out in a gym, right?
Yeah.
And so then like you're like, oh well, I know how to do double bases and cradles and full ups and switch ups and all these things. But then to go into a gym and look at it and be like, okay, well, I still want that physical activity, but how do I do that in a traditional gym? Like, also, like, if you've ever done leg kicks or like toe touches in the middle of a commercial gym, you get some funky looks. But yeah, and I think also like when you think about like nutrition and that as well, right? You are going to the point where as an athlete, you are typically expending quite a lot of energy, and how you fuel your body when you're not at that level of competition or activity also then starts to change. So I think then there's so many different just like snowballs that go from, okay, I'm retiring or pausing, to, oh my gosh, what am I doing now? Right. And so, yeah, I 100% agree. I think the concept of grief is 100% true. Like, I think, like you said, not enough athletes talk about it. Not enough parents also maybe are aware that that's the journey that happens when, you know, your athlete has had this incredible point of maybe they've been in cheer for 10, 15 years, and they're now going to experience that as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so for someone who is so involved in so many things. So like, yes, you're a Team Canada athlete. Yes, you've been an athlete in All-Star, but you also, you judge, you've been a choreographer, and you also participate in athlete training camps like Cheer Factory's upcoming one in August. So how did those come to be, and why did you choose those paths?
Yeah, always sort of right from the beginning of when I was involved in cheer, I kind of dipped my toes into every little part of it, like to figure out what it was I liked. I started coaching my first year of university. Trace often had his university athletes coach the all-star teams, and I coached senior, which I guess would now be U18, all through university. And then I coached Western All Girl for 5 years. And with those teams, like the choreo thing kind of started because I did all of my team's choreo.
Yeah.
When you're coaching university students, like they do not have the money to pay for a choreographer to come in. So I always did my own choreography for my teams. And so I was like constantly learning and figuring it out as I went. And then that slowly turned into me doing choreography for like people that I knew and some friends and stuff. And then how I ended up doing a little bit of work with Cheer Factory a couple of years ago, Chris had reached out to me because he needed somebody on fairly short notice that like knew what they were doing with choreography. And so he asked if I could do a little bit for him, and I agreed to that. And I will say it was like way out of my comfort zone. The very first one that I got sent to, it was a couple U8 teams. And like, as somebody that worked with university students most of my career, I was like way out of my wheelhouse. But it ended up being like a lot of fun. And I actually, this past season, coached a U8 Mat Vision because it actually turned out to be something that I really loved. That age group in particular, like they learn so quickly. And it's so interesting to see over the course of a season, their personalities change and the amount that their confidence grows in themselves in such a short amount of time. I find that age group so rewarding. And I'm so grateful to Chris that he put me in that situation for me to learn that, because I love it now.
You know what? Shout out to Chris. He's just such a wonderful human.
Yeah. And like, for anybody who doesn't know Chris, like I really love working for him. We align a lot on his values. Like he is a very genuine, kind person, and he really focuses on increasing access to the sport for those that do not otherwise have the resources. And he is very humble and does not publicly share these things. So I'm happy to say it on his behalf.
Yes.
But like, that's one of the reasons why I was so willing to start working with him, just because I really believe in the work that he does.
Yeah. For anyone who doesn't know, Chris has pledged to help actually fund athletes' tuition so they are able to participate in the sport. And every year he keeps increasing the number that he is pledging to different athletes across Canada. And it is just incredible. He's a wonderful human being. And I remember that we went to the first Cheer Factory conference and he said, community over competition. And it has been like the one tagline and like thing that has stuck out to me so much over the last few years as we've kind of developed a community. And that's very much where, when I was looking at starting the podcast, I was like, no, like community over competition, like collaboration over everything, because that's what's going to help push our sport and careers and jobs and all of that forward. So yeah, I love that. I think it's, and also shout out to the U6 and U8 coaches, because you know, they are coaching the future world athletes. They are coaching our future elite athletes. And especially like U6 novice, like I coach U6 novice this year, and they are the little sweethearts of my life. Like they gave me so much joy because they just love it, right? And you get to show them your passion for the sport. And to watch them and then see by the end of the year when they start looking at tryouts and they're like, okay, I want to do this. And I saw this team, and there's the sweetest moment I had from this past season was in our team chat. I had invited all of the U6s to come to a competition. It was a free entry, like 20 minutes away from the gym. And I'm like, okay, like come see it, right? Like you're going to see everything from like U6 novice up to like I'm in BC, and you'll see Blackout, who at that time were the level 7 all girl champions. Like their entry like was incredible, all these things. And there's a photo of this U6 athlete looking at the stage as these world athletes are on it. And it's just like pure, just like love and like, oh my gosh, what are they doing? And then I had another one of my littles was her mom was like, I can never get her to sit still. And she sat still for 3 hours straight watching these worlds teams and like, level 5 U18. And she was just like in awe. And I'm like, yeah, they're the ones that are going to be on Team Canada in 10, 15, 20 years, whatever. And like, it all started because they got to see that, right?
Yeah.
I love that. So when it comes to it, so your career has done so many different things, which I think is a testament just to your love for the sport and your passion for all things that have to do with cheerleading. So for you, what has stood out as being the most impactful way of finding and then going after opportunities?
I would say saying yes to every opportunity that comes in your path. Nobody that has done something for the first time knew what they were doing or felt like they were ready for it. And saying yes and pushing yourself out of your comfort zone is how you figure it out and how you learn. And that was something that I wish I had been more bold with when I was younger. But it's definitely something that I've learned over the years, that sometimes feeling discomfort about something is a positive thing. It means it's something that's going to help you grow and help you learn.
Yeah. And then if you weren't doing your current role in cheerleading, what other role would you want to do?
In cheerleading?
Could be, or in any other kind of youth sports capacity.
Yeah. I think, you know what? That's actually a tough question for me, because I think that's kind of what I'm trying to figure out now that I've retired. Like I'm at that point where I'm still kind of in limbo of figuring out like, okay, I'm done now as an athlete, and where do I want to focus my efforts? Where do I want to move forward with this? Like I work full time as well. I work in private insurance. So I balance doing the parts of this that I love along with a full-time job. And yeah, I'm working on like kind of narrowing down what are the parts of this that matter the most to me, where I feel like I can have the biggest impact, and where I want to go from there.
I love that. Yeah. I think exploring different options and being able to see all the different things that you can do on like not only in the sport, but also I think that someone said earlier in the podcast or something like that was like you don't know what you don't know, right? So like being able to take time to find what you're passionate about, right? And like you said, what are the things that make the most impact for you is a hard thing to do. Like it requires a lot of self-reflection and a lot of time and space to be able to do that. But I think that the result at the end of it ends up being a more fulfilled life.
Yeah. For sure.
Okay, my final question is, and I like to ask this to everyone who comes on, which is if you think back to like 14, 16-year-old Kaitlyn who has just started in cheerleading, what do you wish that someone would have told you about all the things that you would have experienced?
I think if I could talk to myself at that age, I'd probably tell myself that what I'm doing matters. I definitely didn't realize at the time how much it was going to matter for me later in life. In the moment, it was like a sport that I was doing. I never would have imagined myself being 35 and competing on Team Canada still. And like, if 16-year-old me got told that, I'd be like, that's insane. There's no way. And so I think that's probably what I would tell myself is like, what you're doing matters. Pay attention to it and take it all in.
Yeah, I love that. That's like, that can be the whole clip right there. Just like what you're doing matters. Well, thank you so much for being a part of the podcast. It has been amazing to talk to you. And like I said, being able to fangirl, because like you are literally like one of my biggest idols. And I'm so glad. I know like 2 years ago, I got to tell you that, but it is like being able to highlight the incredible things that you have done and not only are doing right now and being able to do for the sport. So I know for a lot of people, like, thank you for everything you have done. And thank you for being a part of this podcast.
Thanks, Rochelle. That's really kind. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, make sure to turn back in 2 weeks where we're going to be answering the question, what happens after the routine ends?